All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to the March 6th Just Transition Subcommittee of the Vermont Climate Council meeting. We joined a few minutes late. Apologies about that. We were just contemplating that we don't have a quorum this evening for the Just Transition Subcommittee meeting, though we have a strong and mighty group of meaningful people here. I think we're going to do a little adjustment to the agenda given the audience that we have this evening. So I think I'm going to review somewhat of an adjusted agenda now. We'll save the February meeting minutes to be approved or accepted at a future meeting. We'll do some of our Climate Action Office updates, those in particular which are time sensitive, including the input sessions happening in April. We may save some of the larger conversations for our next meeting when we have hopefully a more complete subcommittee attendance. As we have a big section of the agenda this evening was designed to be focused on the climate action plan revisions of the two sections that the subcommittee has kind of responsibility and input towards, which would be the Just Transitions chapter and the public engagement chapter. We'll talk, I think, maybe briefly about those, and then maybe aim to stay on and honor our public comment time that's held at 5:30. And then probably end early. We had a discussion topic scheduled to happen following that around how the Just Transition time in upcoming both Climate Council and Steering Committee meetings could be best used. And then talk about upcoming meetings. What else was in the what's next? I gotta scroll down here. Oh yeah, and then I guess just like the final steps needed to finalize the Just Transition chapter. So we don't really any kind of reactions to that. I guess we're not going to do a formal kind of acceptance of the agenda. We don't have a quorum and we're modifying it a little bit. Okay. Sophie, are there the time sensitive kind of Climate Action Office updates that you want to offer? I'm happy to take a few notes.
Sure. Thanks, Abby. And it seems like you're also in a facilitation role. Are you sure that you want to do both facilitating and note taking, or I could then take over note taking after I finish a little update?
Yeah, sure. I'll send you the document. Yeah.
Okay, great. So the kind of most time sensitive update is that there's a climate council meeting on the 10th. That's this coming Monday. It's mainly about the Cap and Invest study. So for folks who haven't been, who it hasn't been on their radar, there's a study that occurred about Cap and Invest markets, which are like an economic strategy for reducing climate pollution and raising funds that can be reinvested in climate action. That's my short version. If you want to watch the whole presentation about the results of that study, which looked at what it could mean or look like for Vermont to join one of those existing programs. There's only one that currently exists, and there's another one that's in development. I'll drop that link in the chat. It's also findable on the calendar for those watching the recording at the Climate Council's last meeting, which was February 10th. So that's where you can find that recording. So that occurred, and then the Climate Council was interested in hearing more from folks who are actively involved in these programs, both the one that already exists and the one that's in development. And it sounds like we've got some folks who have been deeply involved in those coming to the Climate Council meeting on the 10th. So it'll be an interesting opportunity to hear um, directly from people involved in those existing programs and what it's been like for them, and ask some questions that could be relevant to Vermont. There is a tie-in with equity to this aspect, as it is a broad, economic system that can impact costs. So those impacts have equity questions around them, and then how the system is designed to raise funds that go into climate action. So then, like, how you would use those funds have equity questions around there. So there's definitely a nexus to just transitions and the focus of this subcommittee. And Sam served on, was it an advisory committee to that study that was about that equity angle of it?
Yeah, I was a technical advisory or group, I think, for the whole thing. I served as the liaison for this group.
I don't know if there's anything that you'd like to add that I glossed over that you feel like is particularly relevant to just transitions.
Well, I guess I was a little bit disappointed in generally how the report was received. Um, uh, I guess I'll just be honest. Uh, I do think that I had thought that one of the major sort of conclusions of this study had, unsurprisingly been that if the revenue is dedicated, or a portion of the revenue that passed, the administration cost was dedicated to specifically um, provide funding for low and moderate income folks to do both switching in terms of transportation, but especially in terms of our thermal sector, and including existing weatherization and fuel switching programs, then this could be a really key source of funding, a sustainable source of funding for those programs, especially given at a time when we're potentially losing federal funds. And I was frustrated, I guess, by some of the summaries, which seem to suggest instead that the program writ large would specifically burden low and moderate income Vermonters, instead of, making it clear that the state could structure it fundamentally to not only like be neutral with carve outs and those sorts of things, but actually support specifically those Vermonters. So I don't know, I think that was an interesting choice, and I don't know why if that was intentional or not, but I was frustrated because I think there is I think that was quite apparent to me that could have been a choice that we made to sustainably fund programs that we already know are working and really important to not leave people behind. So I felt like maybe folks didn't want to have to say no if that's the way it was framed, if there were other reasons why folks didn't want to engage with the program. But I don't know, I was sort of disappointed because I think it could actually be really helpful to our existing programs. And also I think people don't it's not about like, oh, we just want carve outs, or oh, we just, we don't want to have to do it. It's about people also want to be given the ability and the support to pursue this, to pursue parts of the transition, and especially because it helps with long-term finances and on a household level. So I don't know, I just rambled a little bit, but yeah, I don't know what avenues or opportunities there are for us to continue talking about that, or perhaps putting that as a question or as an opinion or whatever from this group if folks are interested and read it similarly, forward to either to the Climate Council or to others who made comments on the report, like the treasurer. But that would be something I'd be interested in.
I really appreciated hearing your takeaway and your reaction to all that. That'd be interesting to talk about if Just Transitions wanted to put together a statement or perspective.
So I'm sorry, Sam, maybe this is when I can't both take notes and kind of be present. Were your were your concerns around equity efforts that were not represented in the study, or I'm sorry, will you just repeat that piece for me?
Sure, absolutely. No, I thought we had a lot of conversations as the study was going on. And I felt like it wasn't in people's summary of the report when it's been discussed. I feel like a point that was missing, and also when other folks have sort of made a statement on the report, like the treasurer. Maybe this is also like it's hard for me to read the report without the context of having sat through those meetings. So maybe it wasn't clear in the report. And I can go back and try, or maybe other folks, if you've read it, maybe you can say, no, I didn't see that in there. But I was frustrated because I felt like we one of the conclusions that I got from participating in the analysis that led to the report writing was that if Vermont structured our revenues in a way where we directed a portion of the revenue from the program specifically to low and moderate income folks, both in terms of transportation, in terms of fuel switching, like, EV, electrification, whatever, but also in the thermal sector, supporting our weatherization and our fuel switching programs on the thermal and the building side of things, that could be a stable source of funding for those programs, into the long into the future, instead of constantly having to cobble together funding sources year to year, especially given the current federal funding landscape. And that it wasn't like that wasn't necessarily the part of the analysis. Shows that, of course, you could do a carve out for folks. The equity considerations in the analysis are like, well, folks might be impacted. There are impacts to folks who don't choose to switch. But if we direct our revenue to cover that, not just through carve outs and exceptions based on income, but actually specifically through supporting folks to transition if they so choose, then those aren't, I guess, they don't have to be burdens if we structure our revenue in a way where we alleviate it. So yeah, I don't know. I was like, are people's response, oh, like as a state, we're not interested in doing the program because it's only going to make us money to support. I mean, in my head, I'm like, why wouldn't we want to do that? That sounds great. And maybe there's something I'm missing or whatnot, but, or maybe it doesn't pencil out for the right people. I don't know, but I thought I mean, yeah, I thought it would be worth discussing, and I didn't love equity being a reason why folks weren't supporting it when their answer made some big assumptions about where the revenue would go. Sorry, I don't know if I'm being clear.
Yeah, and if I can lift up one thing I'm hearing from you, Sam, that might help with, I think, what Abby's asking for the notes is, it sounds like you're kind of reflecting on not so much the report itself, but reactions to the report that you've been hearing from the council, the treasurer, maybe other entities too. Am I capturing that right?
Great, thank you.
One piece of information I'll share is that is both a bummer and maybe like optimistic in terms of the like what the options are ahead of us. California, which is the current existing carbon market, so just to backtrack for folks' knowledge, the one that exists is called the Western Climate Initiative. It was started by California. Quebec is part of it. And Washington is trying to join. California recently pushed back the year in which new parties can join, including Washington, I believe to 2027. The other program, which is in development, is New York's. So I guess the takeaway from that is that like there's no way that we can take action to join something right now because of what California's just done. So I just learned that recently, which is maybe helpful information to know of, like, at least there's still time. there wasn't really, at least there wasn't really an option to join something right now at this moment.
Thank you.
So
Yeah, do you want?
I'll move on to the next update, which is just about spring engagement sessions about the climate action plan. And those are going to be happening in April. They're going to be, I just got confirmation on like the last of them that we're getting scheduled. So I'm trying to get promotional materials and all that information out to the Climate Council and subcommittees, and then more widely promoted, which the RPCs are, the regional planning commissions are being rock stars with helping us promote. We're also going to be sending out the word through community-based organizations we've been building relationships with and other broad outreach mechanisms so that we're trying to get the word out more broadly. In summary, in April, there's going to be 7 in-person sessions. Those are geographically distributed around the state. And there's going to be 2 virtual sessions, where those virtual sessions are going to bookend the in-person sessions. So there's going to be a virtual session, I think it's April 10th. That's kind of like the soonest we can do that. Then in-person sessions will be the week of the 14th, 21st, and 28th. And the final virtual session will also land sometime that week of the 28th. So again, I don't have all of those emails or all of that information in one place for you all yet, but I'm working on that and we'll get that out to you before this weekend. It would be great to have Just Transitions folks join. I think that Liz was going to get some information about per diem for if you were to join those, and I didn't see any email on that, so I apologize. I don't have that information for you right now, but we will get that out of whether it could qualify for per diem in what sense. Any questions?
Would you say that you imagine a role that Just Transition subcommittee members could play at public input sessions? You know, do we want to help with promotion? Do we want to, would it make sense to possibly have attendance at meetings? I know that we had, yeah, anyway, those are, I guess, your thoughts. Or if there was kind of topics that we wanted to ensure were uplifted during those input sessions.
Yeah, I think promotion definitely helpful, especially to folks who might not otherwise hear about it. And again, I'm sorry I don't have the per diem info, but if Just Transition subcommittee members come to sessions, one thing that kind of occurred to me of like a support role that's really helpful is like keeping an eye out for people who like might have questions or feel like they're falling behind. Being you know, this is something that somebody from Consensus Building Institute is going to kind of play that role, but it could absolutely be helpful to have multiple people playing that role where it's like, if you feel lost in the conversation, which hopefully we're doing a good enough job where people don't feel that way, but it could also be sometimes somebody like is more of an introvert or more shy, and like being a buddy to help those people. I'm not articulating this super well, but I think being that extra resource or person that somebody can turn to with that question that they don't want to ask in front of the entire crowd might be something that subcommittee members could kind of be on the lookout for. Yeah, that comes to mind.
I think we had, this is Kelly. I think we had talked about maybe just having some of our committee members attending some of the outreach meetings in April when we're doing the getting feedback from the public about the climate action plan. And I think that's where, just being there, just asking people and reaching out. And I think that's what I think that Sophie's idea of just like asking those questions and being that person, I think that's where our subcommittee could maybe be helpful.
Yeah, so I'm hearing assist with promotion, attend if per diem is provided, ask clarifying questions, and support other attendees to ensure engagement and comprehension.
Is there a flyer or a graphic with the dates and locations?
I am hoping to get that out before the weekend. And I'll send it by email. Okay, thanks. That's everything I have. And Abby, I can start taking notes from now forward.
Okay. Let me just share this document with you. Okay. Great. So the next agenda item that we had originally planned to touch base on was the finalization of the Just Transition chapter. So as Sophie shared, many drafters provided edits to the draft Just Transition chapter that we reviewed at the February meeting. So there was work that was done based upon conversations and suggested edits that happened over the last month. And that final draft chapter was due to the Vermont Climate Council earlier this week. I think it was actually due at the end of last week, but I think it got shared early this week with the Climate Council as they have that upcoming meeting on March 10th that Sophie mentioned. So the council has kind of like our final draft chapter minus, I think, a few things. One, if there were any last minute changes that the subcommittee wanted to make this meeting, which, given that we don't have a quorum, doesn't feel like we're in a position to be able to make those suggested edits. And the second piece would be the call out boxes that Sam, you had provided some thoughts around and done some drafting of, and we recognized we're on a slightly elongated timeline. So we have through, April, May, to be able to finalize the call out box topics and language. So that's kind of a drafting design component that still remains. I'm curious if there's a desire to go through the chapter at this point, or if, given that we're not able to make any kind of like formal kind of approved edits or do a final kind of sign off by the subcommittee of the draft that the council already has, if we want to take the time to do that right now. See, Sam's shaking her head. I didn't mean to speak for you, Sam, please.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't want to do that. If
Yeah.
we're not gonna make a decisions. I guess my other remaining question. I mean, it would be like if there's a deadline, that's always helpful would it be useful to have 2 or 3 box examples by a certain date? I mean, because otherwise I'm just gonna keep pushing it off until there's like some sort of firm. I'm just to be honest, there's too many other things going on. So that would be helpful for that. And then if anybody wants to help with those and or review the topics, that's always welcome. And then my last question would be, since our chapter doesn't get into a ton about like on a more specific level, on the equity of specific, in terms of like concerns in motherization or concerns around heat, or like very on like more technical, like nitty gritty sort of content stuff. Is there an opportunity for us to review other chapters to offer that sort of feedback in the future?
That comment, Sam, makes me think a little bit about the comments that Callie made as one of the drafters of the section on challenges and stumbling blocks. My recollection was that in our February meeting, we talked about many of the challenges that were captured in this draft chapter. We're more focused on the process as opposed to the content. And so I think we kind of looked to this section of our chapter to be able to possibly capture some of that. And I think that Callie gave some feedback as a drafter that it's like, boy, it's hard for me to do that, having not been a part of all those conversations. And so, really so maybe that comment of capturing the content challenges in our chapter may not be feasible, and that instead that is better fit as part of our participation in the other subcommittees, as you just outlined, or review of the plan. I don't know, at another time. Yeah, help me understand when that could happen if it's no longer at the subcommittee's level at this point, because we just kind of handed our chapter off.
My recollection, because I know you've brought this up before, Sam, and others have had, including myself, have had the same question. And my understanding is like this would need to be, and I'm going to invite Kelly to chime in. Like my understanding is that this is a process question for the council, and like I think the idea was put out there before of like, can the steering committee talk about this? That was my recollection, but maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe that was just an idea I had in my own brain. Kelly, has that been brought up at the steering committee level of whether Just Transitions can review actions in other parts of the plan?
I think we've talked about it a little bit. And I apologize, I was a little distracted because my child was trying to get me to open up snack things for him. We have talked about different things about how our subcommittee could help, how we could review things. Is there a specific, did I miss something like actually specific about what we would like to do?
From my memory, there's been like the idea of could Just Transitions look through the actions
Yeah.
and say like, here are the ones that Just Transitions thinks are a priority from an equity and justice perspective, and be able to like flag those. That's come up several times, but we can't do that without like, I say we, Just Transition Subcommittee. I don't like it seems like the best process would be to get like council buy-in for that to happen, and
Yeah.
the steering committee would be kind of the place to start that conversation. So
yeah, and I think a lot of what we've been talking about now, just like what makes sense given the time horizon we're looking at for this next round of this new climate action plan, that basically we would, I think our subcommittee can give some advice and try to give Like try to say like, okay, as we're going through the next few stages, here's what we're going to do, and here are some principles or questions that you should be attending to at this stage. So that's where, I mean, I think that's where we left things, but sorry, I'm a little bit lost because I'm also not looking at you guys on the screen, so I might be missing.
Yeah, so I'm curious at the council meeting on Monday, the 10th,
Mhm.
is there space there to have subcommittees kind of like talk through their kind of final chapter contributions towards the climate action plan and maybe even offer, would that be a space to say, you know, like, so here's the just transition chapter, this is what's included, this is what's not there, which is kind of this content review for just transition, equity, and justice, but we'd like the opportunity, you know, we propose the opportunity for just transition subcommittee to do that review of actions, to kind of like just put it on the council's radar, or you're suggesting, Sophie, that it maybe go to the steering committee first? I just don't know what the plan is, I guess, for the meeting on Monday, for the climate council meeting on Monday, and if there's space there to voice this desire.
I'm looking at the meeting on the 10th, and I'm realizing that the update that I gave about the meeting on the 10th was about the cabin investing was actually for the meeting on the 17th. So that's what happens when it's in my lap rather than Liz's, is that I tell you about the wrong meeting. So sorry about that. I'm not as in the weeds with the Vermont Climate Council as I used to be a year ago.
You could just change in the meeting notes from like 310 to 317 and we're good, Sophie.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm looking at here, I'm going to pop it in the chat. The agenda is not up there yet. I know Liz is going to get that out to the council, which you all get CC'd on those emails tomorrow. But you can see on the documents currently listed in the meeting for the 10th that those draft chapters are in there. I'm noticing that ours is not, so let me ping Liz on that, because I know she has it. So I'll make sure that ours is listed on there. I know she's going to send out kind of like the whole collective of the materials tomorrow, so we're not behind. And since
You
we
might
don't
have
have
held off. Yeah.
oh, right, because we had this meeting, so we were maybe going to get a little bit more to her.
Right.
Totally. Since the agenda isn't available right now, I can't speak to exactly what's going to be on it. It's too bad Liz isn't here because she would have that insider knowledge. But like this is their opportunity to talk about those drafts because they're going to have to finalize the draft by the end, the full draft. And I say finalize, you know, semi-final. They're going to have a draft that they're happy with ready by the end of March before the public engagement happens, right? So there should be substantive discussion about the drafts at the 10th, at the meeting on the 10th.
Kelly, are you planning? I mean, you'll be at the meeting on Monday, I suspect.
Yes.
I wonder.
Yes, I will.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I
Trying
know.
to figure out how to unmute.
I'm not, it's okay. Yeah, I know that you're trying to multitask. I wonder if, you know, if you are kind of there representing our subcommittee, if there is the appropriate opportunity to say that, like, we did
Mhm.
not in our chapter capture equity and justice review of the content of the actions, and that there
Yeah.
could be value in just transition review of them. Now, granted, like, I also am a little apprehensive to offer that, kind of just like given
Yeah. Yeah.
capacity concerns. So I don't know that it's a promise. You know, I don't know that our subcommittee wants to promise to do that, but I don't know.
Yeah. No,
Callie, it's
I
okay.
Yes, I think that makes a lot of sense. That just basically, yes, not a promise, but also just saying, hey, here's where we think we could help in the future. Like make it something that is something we could help with in the next phase, and that's something it like signaling that we're looking at that and we're gonna look at it as things go forward, and also um yeah, that we're gonna be there and ready to review anything or whatever we can do to help make sure that we're helping other subcommittees facilitate or you could tell I'm multitasking. Help other subcommittees um looking at all the different things and making sure that we're looking at equity and trying to make sure that we're doing our best to keep um, those guiding principles front of mind and looking at them as we go through.
So I just want to do a quick welcome, Callie. Nice to see you. Thanks for being here.
I'm so sorry I'm late. I had a thing in Manchester that was supposed to end at 3 and then it ended at 4 and I had to rush back here. So I'm sorry.
It's okay. We're glad that you're here. We don't have a quorum this evening, so we're doing a little bit of a modified agenda, but we were just talking about our Just Transition chapter, and we were actually speaking a little bit to your section comment on challenges of not having content or feedback on the various actions from other subcommittees included in our chapter. And so contemplating the opportunity for Kelly as our Just Transition Subcommittee representative on the Climate Council to speak to this offer that we have, Climate Council approval or interest in authorizing us to review actions and do a review or a scan for equity and justice perspective. Acknowledging, there's limited capacity and, participation within our subcommittee at the moment. So not a promise that we would do it, but just, is there a space in the timeline and process for it?
And yeah, I think going forward, like in future updates of the climate action plan, which, once this one is updated, I'm sure before we know it, there's going to have to be another update within a few years or start the process that like built into the charge of the Just Transitions Committee is, if it's not possible to do it this time around, to at least structure it so that next update period that the committee is, that's a prime charge of the committee is reviewing the recommendations and giving feedback on the equity implications.
I love that idea.
Yeah, since we've kind of been like funneling through Kelly with the Climate Council meeting happening on Monday, is that something that you feel like you could bring up, Kelly?
Are you saying me or are you saying Kelly Klein?
Kelly Klein.
Okay,
Kelly
just
Klein will be at the Climate Council meeting in her role as a counselor. So we're kind of saying like, oh, here's all these things we're talking about in Just Transitions, but we're not going to be at the council meeting. So hoping that Kelly can help us, pass those ideas and recommendations forward.
Yes, absolutely. And what I heard, it was Callie who was speaking, right? I'm sorry, I'm like not on my normal computer. And so I think also we're gonna see some changes potentially in what our charge is, because both the executive branch and the legislative branch are potentially looking at changes in the like amending or changing the global warming solutions act. So, you know, we might see some changes, but yes, happy to. Sorry, I apologize. I am super distracted. My small child is pouring water in a way he should not be. Um, oh, Eric. Anyway, yes, I think I heard what you were saying, and happy to. I do think that we should be thinking about what's happening down the pike and where we can be most effective as a subcommittee, which I think is what I heard from Callie. And I'm going to mute. I'm so sorry. This child is being pretty crazy.
That's okay, Kelly. I've also captured these in the minutes so I can highlight them for you when I
Yeah.
send the minutes around.
Okay, so was there any further kind of casual conversation we had wanted to have around the just transition chapter? I think we're not going to review it today. The Climate Council has the version that's in the final draft. We recognize we'll have opportunity to make any final edits, additions if need be, including the call out boxes.
Are you looking for more call out boxes, more stories? Or
Yeah, so I think Sam did just go off camera, but Sam had started to make a list of some of the topics for call out boxes, and I think also expressed a desire to have, you know, others join in and share ideas for topics, or even in the kind of the drafting of call out boxes. So the ones that are
Yeah,
there.
so I
So
think it was
go
back in
ahead.
December or maybe even earlier, I provided a list of like, I mean, things that I would have thought about. So some of them were like best practices in terms of implementation, like upfront cost coverage for programs and things like that. And some were really specific around weatherization and fuel switching in mobile and manufactured homes. And some of them are like, you know, climate change and aging and the, like the role of, you know, planning for that. I mean, some of them are about transportation burden or whatever. I mean, I don't have the list in front of me. I could definitely pull it up again. But I think we had gone over that in a meeting quite a few months ago. So happy to go off base of that. But that's getting to some of the content specific stuff that those boxes could be placed in chapters or end up in ours. But I had not been focused specifically on stories, but more so on the actual sort of some of the issues that had come up in the conversations in some of the other or could come up or should have come up in some of the other subcommittees. But
Sam, I'd be happy to look at one, I'd be happy to help. Two, there's like alignment / overlap with some of the stories and some of the other chapters, stuff that I've heard like David's public health chapter, for example. So maybe if you want, and anyone else who wants to be involved in the Just Transitions call out boxes, I'd be happy to hop on a call and kind of look at those pieces together and look at like, oh, what's kind of already being covered, or like where might this fit based on what else we know is happening. For example, the weatherization one you mentioned, like we'll have a story that is like on that topic. So does that mean that's like we should have an extra call out box with that, or that like we deprioritize that because there's a story that's kind of on that topic that's happening? So
what do you mean by story? I mean, because I mean, this is what the thing is. We don't have to write these call boxes if the chapter's already covering them. We could just
pull that out and highlight it as like, this is an example of what, you know, and make sure that that's explicit or the framing is there. But I wasn't thinking about, I don't know what you mean by story. I was thinking about more just as a thread so people could follow it all the way through.
Totally. So when I say story, I'm kind of talking about these other things that are happening. So it was a couple meetings ago, we went through like these story subjects that we're working on. We're supposed to have a contractor, but that's through federal funds, so that's on pause. But we're still going to be trying to do these stories that are like specific to various topics, represent various geographies, represent various scales of climate action that kind of demonstrate what exactly a particular climate action looks like on the ground. So that's exactly what you're saying of like, oh, if there's already a story that's happening about this, then so that's kind of what I'm offering. Is like I'd be happy to like look at all those pieces together.
Say so far in the draft chapter, there were three call out boxes kind of drafted with language that I can see. One is like, what is a just transition, which was designed to sort of just be like, rather than include that in the like narrative of the chapter, do it as a call out box. The other was identifying the difference between the term of equality versus equity. And then the third was kind of further defining youth as an impacted population. So those are not quite, those are like a different type of theme, but I think those could be like to what you were imagining, or what I heard you describe, Sam, as like kind of like following a thread through even our chapter, but also throughout the whole plan of, you know, some definition of terms, some further detailed communication. I think Claire and I had talked about possibly two other topics for call out boxes could be like data related to, and Claire may help me if she's able to get on, but data related to the demonstration of climate change in the ag and energy sectors. Of like, I was thinking, so the piece that I was thinking of contributing was just like what we had in 2023 and 24 as part of flood loss within the ag community in Vermont, which is like in the $69 million kind of realm, as an example of impacted communities as a result of climate shift, for example. Clearly, I would say, I don't think we've actually kind of solidified the call out boxes structure or themes, and that does feel like it should be a group that maybe takes the next phase of kind of drafting contributions to the updated plan.
Yeah, it might be easier to do that if we, alongside reviewing, like even if we're not formally asked to review, if the call boxes are something that we can offer, looking at the other chapters, then we're not, at least not duplicating work. So it seems like those things go hand in hand. Also, like, doesn't have to happen that way. Just, it would be a shame to lose the work that was done, or the sitting all this other committee meetings with liaisons and not end up having that in the chat in the plan anywhere would be a lot of hours. So yeah.
Okay. I really appreciate that, Sam, and that you're kind of asking for others to join you. So I'm happy, Sophie offered, I'm happy to join you. I think that at a previous time, at least on this specific topic that Claire had offered, I'm gonna kind of put her name on that list as well. She can let us know if that's no longer a feasible option from her side. And maybe we can talk about this at the April meeting as well. Okay, so part of my goal was to think about this meeting ending early, likely, given that we don't have a quorum, but honoring getting to 5:30 to capture any public comment if there were any members of the community that were intending to join our meeting. So I'm sort of thinking we have about 22 minutes left that we could discuss any remaining topics before we entertain any public comment. The other items of the agenda, which again, I don't think at this point feel quite appropriate to have as a discussion with our small but mighty group, would be reacting to the draft chapter outline that was provided in the meeting materials for the public engagement chapter. So Sophie kind of drafted that quick outline with the intention that we would do a larger brainstorm as a group of what to include, what seems important to include in that public engagement chapter of the updated climate action plan. Again, I'm not proposing that we do that this evening, but Sophie, I want to check if we did that in April instead. Is there value to having some, even if it's just a partial kind of informal conversation now before the input sessions for your benefit, from your perspective?
And wait, sorry, I was kind of taking notes at the same time. Is this
Yeah.
for the public engagement chapter or the?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Public engagement.
Gotcha, thank you. I don't think so. That line's pretty rough. I think everybody got it with the meeting email. If folks have burning thoughts, happy to hear at this time. But it's super rough, so I could also just like do some more work on it and then bring something more substantive to April, and then we can have that more substantive discussion at that point.
Anyone feel so inclined to engage in a conversation around the public engagement chapter content? Or happy to wait till April?
I don't mean to, I'm just, the public engagement was mostly done by a consultant, right? So I'm not sure what sort of as just transitions we really have to say about it.
I'll be doing most of the work to draft the chapter because I've also been involved with the public engagement through the whole time. And I think just transitions as originally put together, like engagement falls within its scope of work. And acknowledge that, you know, a lot of the work has been outside of just transitions, but having a subcommittee that is kind of the point subcommittee for review and having this go through a subcommittee of the Climate Council. Just transitions is definitely the one that makes the most sense.
I would, yeah, I think the fact that the public engagement is going through another body is partly it's awesome and they're doing a great job, but also, yeah, we as a subcommittee are here trying to, we get to talk about what happened, what's going to happen, and we do, if you look at what our charge is, we are also meant to, say what, we have some oversight over the But the whole public meeting thing. Sorry. Again, sorry. Small child interrupting my thoughts. Anyway, hopefully I said what I said. And sorry.
I think Kelly's at least providing some reflection, or the opportunity for us to offer some reflection on the public engagement work that did happen by a consultant in that chapter of the plan. Does that feel accurate?
I think another thing that comes up for me, that Just Transitions has had eyes on, especially through the liaison roles, is the second half of public engagement. There's doing the engagement and collecting the feedback, and then there's how is it translating into the plan? What are the subcommittees and the council actually doing with it? And we had kind of talked about putting that a little bit in the Just Transitions chapter and didn't get much like content for that. So this is also a place where if Just Transitions wanted, it could be kind of like a report back of here's not just what public engagement happened and like how many people we talked to and what we heard, but like here's what the council / subcommittees did with it. That feels meaningful to me. And so if and that's a place where like Just Transitions, especially through the liaison work, has eyes on some of that. I think there's also something that's a piece that we'd need like from the council themselves, because I know you all are not like directly in the every single conversation at the council level, but I think that's another thing that comes to mind for me. What do we do with the engagement and how do we show what was done tangibly?
Question that I have about that, Sophie, is that what's our what could be a strategy for, I mean, like I asked as a liaison, I asked my subcommittee what they did, and it was a pretty lackluster kind of response, which I think, I had a conversation about, like, was that because that is all that happened, or was it they didn't really think about it in all the creative and constructive ways that they did consider the guiding principles or just transition components? So I'm wondering if we would need to structure our ask differently than say the way that I did, which was just send an email with, a question to respond to. Not sure that I'm going to get a different answer just by giving them a little bit more time. And, I think the same question, I think I probably will get the same response. Now, granted, maybe there's other subcommittees that have a bigger, more robust story to tell. And just didn't get around to sharing that on our timeline for the Just Transition chapter, but I wonder.
Yeah, do you think that I could imagine like a conversation potentially eliciting some more things of, just being able to describe, oh, what about this? Oh, what about, giving some examples or, yeah, is that kind of like the other approach that comes to mind, Abby?
Yeah. And maybe I think that's a good suggestion. I think the other could be back to your suggestion, Sam, of looking at the actions from the other subcommittees, and if looking at the actions and feeling like there's really some kind of equity and justice reference or consideration in those actions, asking specifically, like, how did you come to this? Like, what conversations or what dialogue kind of occurred at your subcommittee level to get to this language.
Yeah, and we had talked a while ago about turning the part of the guiding principles, and we had done a version into sort of like an internal evaluation of chapters. And that's something where like we could clearly say like, oh, it's here, here, and here. It is, it directs here, here. And, like that's something that we could actually do as a committee instead of just sort of, I feel like we're talking around it a lot. And like actually having that clear just to evaluate them, the chapters, and then if we need to go back and have that conversation, and if not, if it's clear or we want to reflect on the review or something, but that's instead of us just like asking others to constantly do more or think about it differently, we could actually review it and then give it back. And that could be, and that summary of that work could be there, integrated as well. Maybe part of that is, we receive community feedback reflected here, here, and here, or, I don't know. But even if it's just quick, I mean, that seems.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that was the idea several years ago, right? And there was like a scoring rubric that Just Transitions came up with, and it was supposed to be applied to different actions. It all sounds very familiar, but I'm not sure that it ever really went through the way you're describing, Sam, but I think it's an important piece for even just accountability of the actions following the equity piece. Because I always wondered what enforcement this subcommittee actually has, and really it's sounds like none. It's more of an advisory role, but it would be nice to be more involved in the specific actions once they're there, and to look at them and make sure that that they have that review. Because I thought originally that was kind of the whole idea. And you're right, we do talk about it a lot, and it seems like we don't actually get down to that point.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, again, I think those are good suggestions that we should bring to the bigger conversation in April, when we hopefully have a more complete subcommittee. The one other item, I'm going to try to run through these next two pieces, and then we'll come back to public comment. Something I think we should also save for the April meeting is how just transition time should best be used during Vermont Climate Council and Steering Committee meetings. So my understanding is that there's time held in those agendas for a just transition space, whether that's an update that is provided, that Kelly typically provides, or other steering committee members provide on the work that's happening in Just Transition Subcommittee. There's also been a conversation that we could use that time in additional ways, whether that's for some training, review of the guiding principles, kind of along the lines of what we were just talking about around the actions from the climate action plan. Discuss if there's, I think that's just an open space that we could decide how best to represent the just transition kind of focus during those larger meetings. And I think Kelly was designed to kind of provide us some context around that as a council member. I'm not going to ask Kelly to do that now, but I think that's kind of just a little primer to the topic for April. there's anything that anyone feels like you want to bring up on that right now.
I can just chime in that we had looked at the upcoming climate council meetings. There was a document that like the steering committee reviewed that kind of laid out broadly what the climate council meetings will cover through, I think, this coming meeting on the 10th, maybe one other. So kind of the idea was, oh, we made that guide for the subcommittees. That never happened for this round for the council. Can we at least, like now, in the essence of time, give some advice for the upcoming council meetings on how to incorporate the just transitions principles into their current work, noting that time is of the essence at this point as we're really like rounding the corner here.
Well, okay. I'm gonna suggest that we kind of leave it there since we're not gonna really dig into that, and we'll resurface that topic next month. So I want to just talk briefly about what's next around finalization of the just transition chapter. My understanding, just to recap, is that the version that we have, that Liz currently has, that the Climate Council members have, and will be soon posted on the website, is our final. Thanks, Danielle. Is our final draft for now, with some additional components that will be added. So there's nothing more that we need to do on that just transition chapter for now, other than think about the call out boxes in the coming months. Does that feel accurate, Sophie?
Sounds right.
Maybe in April, just from like a process, like I dotting, T crossing, we might want to have a quorum vote of the final draft because we didn't do that this evening. I don't know if I don't know if it has merit at the point of being out of order if the steering committee is or the climate council members have already approved it. I don't know. I think that's a question. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We can talk about that. The other thing is just talking about upcoming subcommittee meetings. So we have been meeting monthly. We've had a few meetings with quorum, still quite a few meetings without quorum. And then in previous years, we have taken like a summer recess and not met in July and August. So I think that's right. I think we've just taken those 2 months off. So I just wanted to just do a check with those that are here. How does it, what's your reaction to monthly meetings and the possibility of having those in April, May, and June, and then not again until September? Or should we be looking at an alternate schedule given kind of our quorum challenges? And when I say alternate schedule, I don't know if that means meet every 2 months. I don't know if that means meet at a different day or time. We've kind of played with that a little bit. I know it doesn't work for everyone, and some people have periodic standing conflicts with this time, but I'm just curious what people's reaction is.
We have like the climate council final plan is due July 1st or June 30th or something. So we should expect that we have duties up till that point, and then afterwards, I totally think we could take the summer off because that we won't have anything we need to do. So yes, sorry. Again, trying to focus on multiple things at once, but that was.
And Kelly, when
I
you
thought.
say summer off, do you mean July and August, or do you mean a different time frame than that?
Oh, yeah, no. So, I mean, the climate action plan, we have to get this all done and up and going and approved by the end of June or July 1st, right? So our subcommittee does not need to plan to do anything substantial after that point. Hopefully we'll have things to do after that, for the next iteration of the climate action plan. But right now we have the one, and the deadline is June 30th or July 1st. So I think we can definitely say, oh, we're going to take the summer off.
Yeah, no,
after-
I heard that part. I just wanted to reiterate it. So are you saying take July and August off, but is your kind of perspective meet monthly in April, May, and June, and then again in September?
I think it would be good for us to meet certainly until the deadline for the climate action plan. We may have new information because the executive branch and the legislature might make some changes to what our directive is for the Global Warming Solutions Act might have some little changes to it, so we will want to keep an eye on that. But in general, yeah, I think we should just keep meeting up until the deadline for this particular iteration of the climate action plan, and then after that we can decide.
What Kelly's referring to is that the legislature, I think people are aware, but the legislature this session has bills to potentially change expectations and process around the Global Warming Solution Act, which my understanding is we're likely to have a longer legislative session this term than normal. So I think the legislature is going to meet into June, is my understanding. So I'm comfortable and supportive of taking July and August off, and then maybe reconvene in the fall with some possible build, new language for GWSA or not. It's hard to say. I'd like to hear what others are feeling about meeting monthly, the lack of quorum, summer kind of recess break. Thank you, Mona. I see a thumbs up. And if you have no opinions, that's fine too, and it's not a requirement to share.
I don't want to be a broken record. I think if we're gonna do review of it in any way, then great. Those meetings will give us a chance to do that. If not, I'm not sure. I mean, then we should find maybe something else clearly to focus on in this time so that we're making good use of it. And yeah, because I feel I've had a few, maybe it is, yeah, lack of quorum and stuff, but I have a few meetings where I'm not really sure what we're doing. So, and I think that's partially stuff that we absolutely can't control. And then, but I don't know, maybe we can find some really concrete things maybe to do. Otherwise, I'm not sure if we're not gonna review it or anything. I'm not sure. I feel like there's much to do April, May, June. But I would be very happy to use that time to do either propose things or something else.
And
Abby, did you see my note? Who was reading the chat? Anybody following the chat?
Yes, I am, I am
Yeah.
Mona, so, I do see your comment, so Mona has a comment in the chat that says, should we think about changing the language of equity due to the new administration? Is there something about that, Mona, more that you wanna offer?
Yeah, I just heard that he's going to be actually reviewing all the organizations that they are funding and evaluating who is which organization, which agency are actually applying equity, and he's going to be stripping them out of their federal funding. So he's just going with all his power to destroy everything that has equity in it.
Mhm.
So the climate council will, I don't think they don't want us to do anything with equity, probably, because of, because they don't know what's going to happen with him, or all the funding, what's going to happen. So
Yeah.
should we just think about changing the language? Is there any other synonym for equity that we can use that does not, make him upset?
Independence.
Yeah, so, I have kind of a response to that, Mona, that I have heard from my state agency, but Sophie, I don't know, has the Climate Action Office had any of this conversation around kind of like scrubbing documents and sites for the word of equity that, causes kind of alarm from this administration?
No.
So what I have heard as a state agency, that any of our publications, whether that's content on our website, which would pertain to the Climate Council well, I don't know. Actually, I don't know if this pertains to the Climate Council website, actually, or the Climate Action Plan. But as for the state of Vermont, like all of those plans and documents and sites are considered public record. And so we're actually not, as a state agency, I am not able to go and make modifications to any of those documents to scrub for particular words. We can remove personal information if that is putting any individuals at risk, based on if we include where they live or personal information about them that could be somewhat identifying, that puts people at a vulnerable risk. But changing language on our website is not something that the state of Vermont can do. I will admit that I don't totally understand or fully appreciate the full relationship between the Climate Action Plan, the Climate Council, and the Climate Action Office in the state of Vermont. I know it's a separate entity, and so I don't know if the same kind of public record kind of requirements pertain to the council and the plan as well.
Thanks, Abby. Thank you.
Yeah, I've heard this so many times, and I'm really sensitive to it also. And I recognize that this has been a very effective strategy for many organizations, and I really, and therefore brought it up to our leadership to say, can we do this? And that's what our general counsel said, was that we actually can't as a state entity. It could be a fair question to ask the Climate Council, though, in my opinion. That's only the little bit that I know. So I see the time that it's 5:37. I just want to take like a pause for public comment. I don't see any members of the public here, and I've been watching. I haven't seen anyone join since 5:30, but I think we should, just for the purpose of being attentive to our agenda, and the fact that if there are any members of the public that intended to join our meeting, that this was a time that was held for them. So we'll just take a moment, even though we're a little bit off schedule. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone join the chat or join the meeting formally. Any other comments on Mona's topic? I didn't mean to cut that off. I just wanted to kind of get to the public comment piece before too much time had passed. Maybe this could be on either Kelly and or Sophie's kind of follow-up of just doing a quick ask of what is the public record obligation of the Climate Council site and plan as a quasi public document.
Is the question whether like words need to be changed?
I guess the question that I'm thinking is like, could the Climate Council resources, whether that's the climate action plan or content on the website, be changed to provide an alternative word to kind of like triggering language to this federal administration, like equity and inclusion?
I guess. Well, one thing is it's a state thing, right? It's not a federal thing. And I don't know, I haven't heard anything about that. I can ask what the conversations have been. But unlike a lot of the programs that we're hearing that are actively doing that, a lot of those are like receiving federal funding. Whereas the climate action plan, there's stuff that's related to federal funding in it, but the plan itself and the climate council itself are not specific to federal funding, right? So yeah, I'm happy to ask. I'm not sure how to frame the question.
I'm happy to help frame the question based on the way that Mona put it in the chat, and I believe my understanding, Mona, of the intention behind that it's to ensure it. I just want to just double check it though. The question that you're asking, Mona, is it about recognition that the term equity has resulted in loss of funds, certain individuals and populations being impacted by kind of I'm trying to be politically appropriate here, the disdain for equity work by this federal administration. And so my understanding is that some organizations have done like a find and replace on their websites and in their public documents of the term equity and replaced it with independence or something else that's not as triggering a term that could then not put individuals or organizations or funds at risk.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Some organizations they actually started changing job descriptions and job titles, and this is happening.
Yes, it's definitely happening.
Yes, so there is an executive order to actually, that the providing language access to people who does not speak the language is a federal law since I think 1969 or before, So now there is an executive order to actually reverse that, but it is blocked now at the court. So this is real. It is real.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
Okay, I think I really appreciate the question, Mona, and I think I see the next step is Sophie and I just touching base on like how do we frame that question to the Climate Action Office, to the Climate Council, to the Agency of Natural Resources to best understand like do we have the ability to do that, or because of the affiliation, as I understand it, to a state agency where it's considered public record, we're not able to do that, where other organizations don't have that same requirement and they can go to their website and make changes, they can change job descriptions, they can make edits to documents and other resources of their organization to strip that language and replace it with something less volatile for this administration. Okay. Does that work for you, Mona? Does that feel like we'd be addressing your
Yes.
question?
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Those were, I think we touched on everything or made a plan to bring things up at the April meeting, which I'm not hearing from anyone that we don't want to go forward with meeting again in April, likely May and June, and then taking a few months off. So then we would be together again. Let me just look at the date in April. April 3rd. All right. Anything else that's on anyone's mind? Great. Well, thank you all for being here. It's wonderful to share the space with you. And while discouraging to not have a quorum, I really actually sometimes find great value, at least, in these conversations when we just get to be a little less on the agenda and a little more casual about our discussion. So thank you. Sophie, thank you for taking notes.
Thank you. Thanks,
Okay.
everyone. Have a good night. Thank you.
Yeah, everyone take care of yourselves.
Bye.